I welcome Rajesh Rajamani to the program. He's a author, writer, critic. He graduated from IIM, Indian Institute of Management, but he changed track to write on social issues, then criticism, and then came to be a filmmaker. And he has made a very interesting film, two films, one a two-minute short film, Lovers in the Afternoon. Lovers in the Afternoon, and then The Discreet Charm of the Savannas, which was released exactly a year ago, 20 September, I think, which created ripples and, it invited a lot of discussion, it triggered lots of debates. So he is here as part of the, that there is a competition for the films here, and he is part of the jury for fiction. 3-member jury, he is the member of the fiction jury. So, Rajesh, you have been a writer. First you studied management, then you started writing, and then finally you are a filmmaker. And you wanted to be a filmmaker, or it just happened? Can you?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be here. So I always wanted to be a filmmaker, but being in a very average middle class family, you want to do engineering and management, and so I was in banking. So I was also, but I was always trying to make the jump sometime. From my school days, I wanted to become a filmmaker. So then I think you reach 30 and you realize, oh my God, if you have to make changes in life, you can't postpone any further after 30. So I made the jump. I quit my job and I wanted to become a filmmaker. So in fact, writing about films was actually a coincidental thing. Like when I quit my job, what I really wanted to do is make films. But in that process, like I was watching a lot of films. Like watching films was something that was happening, throughout my life. So when you watch, you end up having some opinions. So I ended up writing that. I ended up writing my opinions, often from a creative as well as a socio-political point of view, and I think that garnered some attention, and I think then they started getting published in media houses. So the writing part is was something very coincidental. I only wanted to become a filmmaker, but I think the writing, because so far I've written more than made films, I think that has got a lot more attention than the films. But making films was what I primarily wanted to do.
So it was not by accident you became a filmmaker, but
Yeah.
you wanted to be a filmmaker.
Yeah, I wanted to be a
first.
filmmaker. I think writing was more
That's
coincidental.
interesting.
Yeah.
So please tell us how you reached the film, the discrete charm of Savarnas, from the obvious reference to the great filmmaker, the film master, and how you arrived at that.
Yeah. So what happened is, I think this was sometime in the year 2018. There was a Bollywood-based casting page on social media, and they actually put up a notice saying that we're looking for an actor who looks like Dalit. So this is a real advertisement. So then I think a lot of conversations happened. A lot of people were calling it out, and they brought it down. But I think the advertisement was still screenshotted, and a lot of people were critiquing about it, talking about it. And I happened to see it, and I found it very amusing. Like what does a Dalit look like? It's very amusing to say somebody who looks like Dalit. But I think our cinema sort of presents low caste Dalits or Adivasis in a certain way. So it was fascinating. I just let it be. I just saw that advertisement and I let it be. And much later, I was watching some film where I just saw a bunch of like two men and a woman running to catch a train. And just saw the shot and I realized, what if these three people are running to find the actor who looks like Dalit? So it just felt very amusing. So I thought, okay, maybe this can be a film. So another thing also was happening is, so when I quit my job and I was trying to make a film, I was also not sure what to make. I was also looking for ideas. And at that point of time, the Tamil short film circuit was completely filled with romance. Every story was either a first date or a breakup, and both of them happened at coffee shops. I hated coffee shop romantic stories, and I was like, almost, I'm not going to make a romantic film, because it's so boring. Everybody's doing that. So we wanted to do something which has no romance at all. So and we saw this ad, and it was very amusing. So then I started writing it. Then eventually we were able to cast and shoot it. Yeah. But one thing what we want to do there also is that you look at any critique on caste, any film which speaks from an anti-caste point of view, or any commentary on caste itself in Indian cinema. they're often very, they often talk about victimhood. It's about violence. It's either honor killing or sexual violence on, Adivasi women or lower caste Dalit women, or sometimes on reservations. So our conversation on caste was not going beyond these three, discussions.
You're right.
Yeah. So we wanted to not touch these things. We wanted to also the commentary, in our mainstream cinema, it almost makes it look like caste is a problem of only the lower caste. But we live in a caste society, and from birth to marriage to death, from where people are buried, caste plays an important part in every section of our lives. So we're all part of this caste society. We all have this baggage of caste. So the idea was to throw attention on, the ruling class, the privileged classes, because I thought, why should a film on a commentary on caste should always only be about Dalits or lower caste and Bahujans. So we wanted to, focus on the upper caste, number one. And also we thought, like, all these films generally on any social commentary is often sad, somebody dies, there's a lot of crying, all that stuff. We thought we'll not do that. We'll make it funny. And then we also wanted to be colorful, because not very dark and morose and all that. We want to be like funny. And so when we started writing it, and then when I finished writing it, I felt it is so similar in its criticism. I mean, I might be flattering myself, but similar to, the discreet charm of the bourgeois. So I thought, okay, why not we keep that title? That seems so fit, and it also could create a sort of curiosity among people. So that's how, we made a film.
Yeah, what you had a very important point, like, all whatever, I mean, not just in films, but any mainstream or of whichever stream, this any artwork relating to Dalit lives has to be in a stereotypical way. That
Right.
has been decided, like, it has been said that they will be wailing all the time. The victimhood is the foundation of most
True.
of the
True.
Dalit life documentation in art. So it's great to hear that you decided in the beginning itself to turn it around and then start on
Right,
that.
right.
So that made the biggest difference in that film, I think. And
Right.
also, what do you think? That film was addressed to the Dalits or the upper caste who, on the other side of the fence?
See, I think
You had somebody in the mind as an audience?
See, I think when
Maybe wrong also, but
no, I'm
just
saying
asking.
when you make a film, you want everybody to watch it. Honestly, you want
Yeah.
it to reach everybody. I think for
So
me,
you're not addressing a particular section, but to the entire this thing.
yeah. So you want to see, it's a commentary on it's a commentary on the society. So I think, but primarily my characters are the upper caste. There is this one Dalit character which comes towards the end in the film, just for a fraction of seconds. So my film focuses on, the upper caste. But I think it's not just about those individuals, but it's a commentary on the caste society and how it works. So ideally, when you make a film, you want everybody to watch it. You're not really aiming at a small section of people.
And how the process of filmmaking went on, like, the funding, you had the funding with you, and
No.
the actors, how were.
No, so because I had a banking job, I had some savings. So we started with my own savings, and halfway we ran out of it. Then I borrowed some money from my parents. So that's how we finished it. Once we finished it, so then what happened is the other film, which we made, Lovers in the Afternoon, even there what we were trying to do is that the discussion on beef, is like in India has been about, cow vigilantism and murder, and again, beef is often connected with violence, or the counter commentary is too radical and revolutionary. We thought we just want to make a film on beef which looks like a dairy milk ad. It's a couple who fight, and the husband, makes beef and makes peace with the wife. So we wanted to take beef to what it is, which is a pleasure food. It's like a dairy milk is a pleasure food, and so is beef.
Exactly.
So we wanted to sort of, and we thought that's political in itself, to sort of, make a love story around beef. That's what it was. So that was produced by Neelam. Parents Neelam produced it, and then they saw my first film and they released it as well.
Okay, that seems a basic thread running through both of his works, like, you don't have to be loud to say things. Even otherwise, you can say some concrete political things without being loud. That's
True,
what
true.
what we
would-
get as an, as an audience, we had this feeling from both the films.
Right.
And
So that's what Bunal does. Like Bunal makes extremely harsh criticism on the class society, but he's able to do it so delicately, so gently.
humorously.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it his criticism even more stronger. Like see, because what happens in if a movie is on violence and or violence and counter violence, then it becomes easy for us to watch it and forget and go. So I wanted to make something which will stay with the audience in some way. Like you want to let a little discomfort in the audience mind. So every time they think, oh, this person looks like a lower caste, upper caste, I wanted them to be remembered in the film, and I wanted a little uneasiness creeping in them. But we say a movie on violence, you watch it, you forget it. It doesn't bother your everyday life. I wanted to leave a little bothersome with my audience. Which I think something like what Luis Buñuel does, it's much more effective in that space. So that's what we went to that.
How was the response to your film in general? Like, did it trigger only positive reviews, or did you?
I
how
was
it like?
I was actually very amused because we thought we're going to get a lot of.
What was the reaction versus your expectation?
So my
in this
expectation,
case?
I thought people were going to rubbish the film, because it's also first film, like we
Yeah.
thought we could have done it better, we were, all that. We had a lot of, we were quite harshly criticizing our own film, and we thought, people are going to rubbish this off, and this criticism is going to make people uneasy and they're going to rubbish it off. But I think very surprisingly, I think people started liking it. People said, I think at one point I realized is what happened is, I think people found it I think they're very scared to criticize the film because I think they started thinking, if I criticize this film, am I casteist? So better I like the film. So, I mean, but that's the call of the audience. I can't do anything about it. Yeah.
And also, do you think that recently there is a people see the new there is a whole lot of films coming from Tamil, especially Tamil. There are other languages as well, like in Marathi as well. Nagaraj Manjunath's films are there. So, do you think the new creed of filmmakers led by Paranjit, there are, I mean, I don't have to name them, but still, Paranjit is there, then Mari Selvaraj film is
Right.
there, Ram is interesting films.
Right.
Then there are their team associated with many of
Right,
the
right.
youngsters coming up
Right.
very interesting films. And also, there are filmmakers who are not Dalits doing, I mean, not from the Bahujan Samaj, doing films like Vetrimaran doing
Right.
some films. So, is this a new film? Because we are actually outsiders from when we see we are talking here in Kerala,
Right.
and we are outside viewers. So, what's your take on it? Is it a new development, or is it any way you can find connections in the Tamil history of Tamil cinema?
I think it's totally from the history of Tamil cinema. See, I think films often are a reflection of the conversation we are having in the society. Otherwise, in the political space, films end up reflecting, what we're talking in, in a social space. So I think the Dravidian movement from the 50s, Karnanidhi, like we had Parasakti. Parasakti is, I think it's much more difficult to make Parasakti today than the time it was. It was a very radical film. It was made in the 50s. So we have the tradition of Dravidian movement in the political space, and that was reflected in the cinema, writing, books, across all cultural spaces. So from the 90s we have the Ambedkarite movement. I think after Dr. Ambedkar works got translated to local languages in the 90s. I think the Ambedkarite movement spread in Tamil Nadu from 90s, and I think the films that we see today are like, say, Paranjit or Mari Selvaraj. I think they are again the reflection of the Ambedkarite movement which is happening on ground. And the same thing with, say, somebody like Vetrimaran or Ram, you would always find a very leftist criticism place. So because I think again the leftists also have had have worked in the ground, so these filmmakers touch upon they look at it a very Marxist perspective. They bring it to their films. It's about a class struggle is what they capture often in the films. So I think the films that we make is very linked to the political political conversation that's already happening. And this is in continuous. So the anti-caste. So if you look at broadly all this as an sort of anti-caste films, so that's happened from the Dravidian times to the Ambedkar times, and leftist films have always existed in Tamil cinema.
Also about Bharati Raja and this.
Right. See, I think Bharati Raja was a very important Bahujan filmmaker. I think until then, the Baujans, which is broadly the backward communities, they were never humanized in cinema. I mean, they might play a side character or an insignificant background character, but I think it was Bharati Raja who went to the villages and he sort of humanized them. He captured their human relationships, the family system, the cultural conflicts, their class struggle also. So Bharati Raja has been a very important filmmaker who's been making films from very Baujan perspective. You cannot exactly call it anti-caste perspective, but in humanizing Baujans, he has played an anti-caste role without even outwardly doing it.
Because he is often seen as the one who brought the rural Tamil life in the screen,
yeah.
so-
I mean, I think see, rural is one thing, but he actually see, until then the backward communities were never humanized the way it was. I mean, I often find sorry.
Is patronizing way? No.
Is in a patronizing way, or they never paid attention to their culture, their life, their struggles. And I think, in terms of his music, I think particularly when Ilayaraja and Bharati Raja worked together in their music, in their songs, I think they brought they dehumanized because the Baujans, the backward communities, they are almost the chunk of the population of Tamil Nadu, but nobody was making films about them. They must be 60-70%, and nobody was making films about them. And it was after Bharati Raja, he started a wave. Like all his Bharati Raja assistants then started making films about the backward communities. And I think the films that we see today also is in some way a continuum of Bharati Raja's and his assistants' work, which is Bhakyaraj, Pandirajan. There are a bunch of them. So yeah, I look at them as so. We cannot. I mean, films often are they exist in a continuous space. We borrow from what's before us and we make films. So even I think somebody like Paranjit or Mari Selvaraj has been able to garner more attention because they're much more vocal in politics, in cinema as well as outside. I think that might have made a slight difference today than before.
And also, do you think since this more number of films related to the lives are come out, there are films like Draupadi also coming out, like
True.
making violent attacks against the
True.
criminalizing the
To lower caste. See,
How do you see it?
See, this again happened during the Dravidian movement also. So the Dravidian movement was making extremely radical, very rational films. Teachings of Periyar were part of it. They were atheist films. They criticized, this family system, the authority of the priests in the temples. So what happened is, as a response to that, the Dravidian films, the Dravidian movement films, as a response to that, we had a lot of religious films about Lord Muruga, Lord Parvati, Lord Vinayaka. We had a whole bunch of, which don't happen today. As a response to those Parasakti, we had a lot of, religious films. So I think any criticism is always going to have counter criticism. So I think as a response to today's, the films of Paranjit or Mari Selvaraj, we have, films criticizing or criminalizing Dalits.
natural outcome
Yeah,
of
yeah,
this
yeah.
response to this kind of
Yeah. That, I think that's always going to happen. It always exists. So yeah.
Okay, and also when we are talking about your films, it had this humor. You decided to tackle the issue in a humorous way. That's very evident in the film. In this context, it's interesting that you are also running a the
Inedible India.
Inedible India on Facebook, that comic series. So
Right.
is it still on?
No, actually, so before we started making the film, so because I think I was too scared to get into making a film, so the comic was in some way a smaller form of writing a small story, So we used Ravi Verma's paintings and we made those characters talk political stuff. So where we use humor. In fact, I think I remember one particular audience once said, one of the readers, he left a comment, which I really enjoyed. I really liked what he said. He said, actually, this comic made me laugh, even though I felt this guy slapped me. So there's a punch, but you also enjoyed and laughed, which I thought was a good thing to do. You make it irresistible for the audience; they have to watch it, but you also land a punch on them. So I think in some way, Inedible India's the kind of articulation we achieved in Inedible India helped me to sort of bring it to the discrete charm of Savarnas. Yeah.
And also, you think that while criticizing, there is a, of course, there is a dominance of right-wing ideas and this attack of invasion of right-wing ideas into this, all these discourses of public discourses,
Right.
spaces of public discourse, and there is so many intolerance we see on display. But also there are strong reactions and all that. Do you think that there should be, you should find innovative ways of tackling it, countering it instead of targeting one person or one party or one this thing? What's your take on that?
I think in films, I think certainly, I think we should be more
social
in,
media
Yeah,
in general, yeah.
I certainly think we can be a lot more creative in the kind of films we make, particularly if you're looking at films or any other art form also. I think, see, you look at, say, the English films, you have filmmakers like Ken Loach. Ken Loach, you look at it as a love story or a family drama, but he also documents a strong, strong criticism on capitalism. Something like Ken Loach does. But I think we don't find such films here. I think anything that's political in Tamil Nadu particularly, or India in general, I think we're too obsessed with violence. And I think there is a certain convenience of it. Maybe because I think our commercial films in general either have action or romance. So I think we are. So I think. Yeah, so we mix both this. We have a anti-caste couple and some violence on them. So I think I think filmmakers can really go beyond it, and there's so much interesting. Yeah.
And also, please tell us, with this age of films to now we have entered the age of OTT.
Right.
And there are, numerous film anthologies happening, films happening on diverse, and OTTs are said to be giving more creative freedom on ways of exploration, of thinking of ideas to the filmmakers. And there are films like we are talking just now about this anthologies happen. One in Navarasa in Netflix and Amazon, that Pudumai
Puttam Pudukali.
Puttan Pudukali.
Yeah.
So, did you watch this series and how?
So I watched Puttam Pudukali, which I thought was quite boring. Then I didn't want to. I read about the reviews for Navrasa, which are quite harsh, and people say it's boring.
Yeah.
So I think one thing that's happening, I think particularly during this pandemic, is that because we are not stepping out to watch, I think audience also, we are sort of forcing ourselves to watch everything, whether it's good or bad, and then we want to complain that it's bad, So I was like, by the time Navrasa came, I decided that I'm not going to watch something bad and then complain about it. I'll just not watch it. I'll probably watch all the pending films that I can watch. But one thing that's happening is, I think OTTs have created, there's a certain belief that OTTs are more experimental, there's more interesting stories to tell through OTTs. At least it might be different in Kerala, I think, but in Tamil Nadu, I think OTTs are functioning in almost like a FMCG. If Hamam is a hit, they'll make Hamam Neem, Hamam Herbal, Hamam Salt, whatever. So it's like it's a one model or something works. They just want to keep replicating that model. They're not so experimental, and I think they are very corporatized. So by the time you have a very super exciting idea, you go through multiple rounds of development with them. I think the exciting idea will be just sort of diluted. I think it's much different how OTTs work abroad, like in America compared to here. And I think in the US, I think we find a lot more experimental stuff being made on the OTT. But here, I think in Tamil Nadu particularly, the exciting work is still done in theatre, because if you're a crazy filmmaker, you just have to find one crazy producer, and if he's willing to believe in you and put money, and you can make a exciting film, But that's not the same with the OTTs. OTTs want to play it very safe, and that sort of makes, so even though there's a popular belief that they are going to open new doors, I think they're actually being a lot more boring than the theatre. Yeah, the other way around. Yeah.
Should we? Is there a question from the audience? This way, I can see.
Yeah, I can see too.
Any questions? Hello. Okay. your films also talks about, I mean, this, other than the subject in your films, there is a strong sense of gatekeeping by Savarnas in all these main discourses, like whether in academia or, thank you, as in now we see nowadays. Like in academia, corporate field, like, culture,
Right.
government institutions,
Right.
decision making bodies,
Right,
wherever
right.
there is a kind of gatekeeping
That's
keeping
true.
is happening.
Right.
So, how does it have you affect? I mean, have been witness to that, or like,
Well, I think rather than,
don't you think that it's a reality?
that's a reality. I
Yes,
mean, we live in a
getting to
caste
you.
society, and a caste society works in a way it works. I mean, like the ruling classes. I think the top 10 percentage accumulate, the resources, wealth,
Yeah.
opportunities. So compared to the rest 90 percentage, that's a reality.
These are facts which nobody wants to
Yeah,
contest or,
I don't even have to discover it.
Yeah.
It's there for us to see. Yeah, yeah. I mean, what we do about it might be different. I think, what are we going to do about it? Are we just, how are we going to respond to that sort of, a ruling class accumulation of wealth and resources? I think that differs from one political ideology to another political ideology. But that's a reality. Yeah.
especially in the fields of academia and all that. I mean, there is this discussions, representations happening, but is there any real Dalit representations happening, or is there voices there?
I think. See, I think.
Anything significant in there?
See, I think particularly in Tamil Nadu, because of the Dravidian movement in general, and then which is followed by the Ambedkar movement, there have been, I mean, I'm not sure whether there's exactly a Dalit representation, but there's a broad Dalit Bahujan representation has happened in academia, in the Tamil Nadu industries, because both the DMK and the ADMKs have, I mean, one can have a lot of criticism about them, but they have stuck to. Yeah, I mean, one can have criticism about relatively. One can say this is bad, that is bad. But I'm just saying they broadly have stuck to the Dravidian principles, and so far at least, I mean, at least till the times of Kalaignar and Jayalalitha, they have been broadly able to stick to the principles, and that's sort of, and I think that's why I think in terms of education, healthcare, Tamil Nadu is one of, like, of course Kerala does much better, but I think Tamil Nadu has been like one of the top 5 in a lot of these human indexes, So I think, and I think our politics, particularly the Dravidian followed by the Ambedkar movement, I think that's, it's the development is a function of the politics that has happened in our state. Yeah.
Yeah. Does anybody wants to raise a question to Rajesh? Anyone? I can't see it. And also, like, what we see in, like, recently we listened to the Supreme Court Justice Chandrachud saying, there is no caste for the southern upper caste.
Right.
Because caste happens only to the.
I mean,
He himself is a privileged,
Yeah,
part of the
yeah.
privileged class. That's
yeah,
obvious.
yeah. I mean,
But still,
I mean, it doesn't matter what
yeah.
he's.
Yeah.
I mean, this caste is a reality that we live with, like.
Yeah.
See, I think from a birth, like from birth, the birth ceremony to, to marriage, to where people are buried or cremated. I think caste. I mean, in all our social spaces, caste plays, and what we eat, what we watch, what we listen to. Caste plays a role everywhere, and I think, I think we've gone beyond. Time, we don't have to discover caste anymore. It's
on your face.
it's always on your face. Yeah.
But at the same time, also it's scary to watch a film like Navarasa, where a filmmaker makes a film like Summer of '92. I don't know. Of course, you have decided not to watch the film. I don't want to burden again with that this thing, but still the thought that that kind of a film can be made in 2020s and you can get away with it is itself is, I mean, scary, I think, to say the least, because all these discourses are on. There is a criticisms happening. There is a pressure to think. the other way around as well.
Right.
Look at the other side of the life you are being forced to.
Right.
All this is happening on one side, and the other side there are also things happening like this, which of course this is not going to. We are not hoping to overthrow all this in a single fine
right.
morning and be happy
Right.
forever.
Right.
It's not like that, but still okay. That fight, that struggle has to go on.
Right.
And also there is this dilemma of when we are saying that we are progressive, we are like we don't talk about caste, but when we come to the real life realities, like as we are saying, birth to burial,
Yeah.
to marriage, everything we are very particular that we stick to our caste,
Right.
that intra-caste, communal equations, we keep it perfectly,
Right.
and then we just pretend that it doesn't apply to us because
Right.
we are
Right.
beyond that.
Right. Right.
So that's a very
True. See, you mentioned about Navrasa. I mean, thankfully I didn't watch it,
Mm.
but I'm saying, see that's honestly it's not surprising, because that's been the norm, like the very not just in terms of from the angle of caste, in terms of gender issues, in terms of our right wing politics in general. I think the norm has been the powerful lobbies have been making films, on these the problematic films, so that's not even surprising. I think the counter criticism is the new phenomenon, or is what changes.
Been easily accepted earlier, maybe.
Yeah, always.
After it, I mean, like.
Yeah. See, I mean, it was produced by Maniratnam, and I'm saying, look at like a film like Roja had a certain criticism on a certain perspective on Kashmir, which is a very right wing opinion, So it's not surprising that Navrasa that Maniratnam produces today. You don't have to be surprised. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Maniratnam, but I mean, yeah, but in terms of politics, there is a certain hyper nationalist politics, which I think is a lot more dangerous than even Priyadarshan's shot. Because thankfully not many people watched Priyadarshan's film, but
the other thing is
Roja because it's celebrated. We look at it as a romantic story. It's got this beautiful songs, so we sort of internalize that politics much easily.
yeah.
But a film like that Summer of '69 or I forgot. That is we're all able to see the problem in that. So as long I think we're able to see the problems in films easily, they're not so dangerous. I think when films are presented to us as family drama or beautiful romantic films with great music, I think they're more dangerous, because they're selling it and we're buying it too, So I think we should be more wary of such films than films which we are easily seeing it as problematic. Which is why I think even Draupadi, I don't think we have to be afraid of Draupadi, because Draupadi.
You don't have to, bro. I'm just raising the point.
Yeah, I mean, because it's politics on your face, Yeah, so that's what.
It's very visible.
It's very visible. Yeah. No, we're never going to look at it as a beautiful film, or we're not going to cry or something. Yeah. Only people who subscribe to that politics are going to appreciate it. Yeah.
And also you had something like, you are comparing this Nayagan and, Paranjit's Kala.
Yeah.
I found it very interesting because I watched both the films and
Right.
Your reading was quite, open eyes in a different direction.
Right.
In a way.
I mean, actually, what happened is I was watching Godfather,
Okay,
and I realized there was one moment which is so similar in Nayagan as well as Kala. So I suppose both of them were borrowed some of their moments from Godfather. And suddenly I realized, oh my God, these two films are actually they're talking the same thing, but in opposite politics, So and then I looked at the white clothes to the black clothes this man wears, and that's Kamal and Rajni here. It's almost like every point the film was countering to each other, and I even sent it to Ranjit. He said he liked it, but he didn't tell me whether that's true or not. Yeah.
That's something interesting. So, you've been to Kerala earlier?
I've been to Kochi once, and this is the second time
You watch Malayalam films?
I watch Malayalam films. Yes, I particularly I think the recent films, it's easy to watch it because of subtitles, easy availability of subtitles, and Fahad Fasil is a big sensation everywhere. So I think we end up watching his films almost like Tamil films, So yeah.
So communication is not that issue there.
I mean,
Not much.
I think the new age films. I think particularly, I think the Malayalam, the sort of new age films, which particularly written by Shyam Pushkaran. I think they have a very nationwide market, I believe, and I think it's easy. I think not just in language, even in their narratives, what they're talking about. I think it's easy to sort of understand and enjoy it.
Do you find any new age Malayalam, so-called celebrated Malayalam films talking about the nuances of caste or anything like that?
I think I think
Have
Malayalam.
you noticed?
I think Malayalam cinema is a little behind. I think in terms of on perspectives on caste. I think in terms of filmmaking style and all that. I think Malayali filmmakers are just much cooler, much better, and all that. But I think in terms of their social critic, I think they played fairly safe. I feel. I mean, I think the criticism or the commentary is very gently in the background. It's and then they often focus on the relationships or something. I think that's also because I think anti-caste history. I think Kerala has had a left history, and the class has been often a discussed point. And I think so that is obviously reflected in the films made in Malayalam.
Dominant theme.
Yeah, that's often the dominant thing. That's like how we had Dravidian movement being reflected in our films. I think the left class discussion has been reflected in Malayalam cinema.
You had this Renaissance movement like Srinarayana Guru, all that were here actually, but that's not hasn't affected the get the
True, yeah.
creative process.
Actually,
here.
so I watched a bunch of films in the competition section.
Okay.
I think there is emerging anti-caste perspectives in Malayalam. I was very fascinated. In fact, they're much better than. They're more creative, I would say, not much, but they're very interestingly creative than even the Tamils, what we have been doing in Tamil cinema. I think it's emerging in Kerala now. I think, particularly when I watched this short films, I was very fascinated, and I think maybe the anti-caste perspectives in Malayalam cinema can happen a little later, but I do think it's probably happening.
There is still scope for that.
Sorry.
Still scope for that.
Yeah, certainly. I was particularly fascinated when I watched the competition films, and I could see that already there. I think they're very cognizant of the caste in the society, and I think they're placing a criticism on it. So it is very fascinating. Yeah.
I think there is no mistakes from the audience. Shall we?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you for listening to us, and Rajesh. Thanks, Rajesh, for finding time. What is this duty for jury?
No,
and then
thanks again. Thanks for inviting, and
Yeah.
thanks for your exciting questions.
hope you're here till the end of
End of
the
festival, yes.
festival. Okay, great. Okay, thank you, Rajesh. and
Thank you.
thanks for-
Thank you.